What's up, everybody? Um, Today I wanted to. I really like the questions that I've been getting when I post on like Twitter and Instagram and stuff for people to make suggestions about videos, because it kind of gives me a sense of what would make for an interesting video that people would like to watch. So, um, this question is coming from Dami on Twitter. I hope I'm not saying that name wrong. I'm sorry, Dami. I'm sorry. I don't want to mess up your name, but thank you for the suggestion. The question was, are darker tone comic book movies or lighter tone comic book movies better? Um, I'm going to take that as an opinion based question, just because it's gonna, I think it depends on who you ask. Everyone's gonna have a different opinion about that. And we see, obviously, with these comic book movies how they are pretty controversial and divisive as far as the lighter ones, the darker ones. Marvel tends to be a little bit of a lighter, lighthearted tone, and less serious, and DC tends to be darker. Now, first off, I just want to say it's okay to like both, but I understand that most of us, including me, are gonna probably lean like more towards one than the other, just because of personal preference, and that's okay too. Another point that I want to make is they don't have to be the same, and they shouldn't be the same, because their characters, their comics are very different. So if the comics themselves and the characters are different, we shouldn't expect the movies to be the same or have all the same tone just because they fit into the comic book category for the movie, a comic book movie category. So personally, I like I have said before, I do like Marvel and DC, but I just prefer more the DC movies, DCU. That doesn't mean I don't like Marvel. That doesn't mean I'm like trying to bash them or anything, because they do make good movies. They make enjoyable movies. They've obviously found a formula that works for them, and they have a large fan base, and their movies also appeal to like a general audience. So they can kind of appeal to more people than just comic book fans, which is a good thing. But at the same time, if you're going to make comic book movies, you also have to keep in mind the fans, like people that grew up reading these comics, people that are attached to these characters and want to see them adapted fairly and accurately in the movies. I'm not saying Marvel doesn't portray them accurately. I'm just saying that since they appeal more to a general audience, I think sometimes that if you're trying to appeal more to a wider audience of people who don't necessarily have to have comic book knowledge, who don't have to read comics to understand what's going on in the movie, then you kind of lose your ability in a way to to please the fans. You know what I mean? So for instance, in order to appeal to a larger audience, a more general audience, who doesn't have to have like a lot of comic book knowledge or knowledge of these characters in order to understand and enjoy the movie, they sort of have to, I don't want to use the word dumb down, but that's the best term I can think of. They sort of have to dumb down, like the villains, for instance. The villains in Marvel movies are not, they're not usually that powerful. Like, and they're not always portrayed super accurately. Like, for instance, or as much, like, I don't know how to explain it. Like, okay, for instance, in Civil War, the villain, Baron von Zemo, he is not just an ordinary man in the comics who's just upset because his family died. And that's how they portrayed him in the movie. In the comics, he's like a powerful, he's not just a regular man, he's like powerful. And so, and even in Age of Ultron, he was powerful, but they didn't I mean, he should have been even more powerful in the movie. But, you know, that it's just an example of appealing to a larger, more general audience. So, and also, you know, their movies are very comedic. They're very humorous. They all have humor. They're all funny. They're not very serious. And even a lot of the scenes or parts of the movies that should be more serious have like a joke in there, which that can ruin it for me because it doesn't, I don't know, it just, it's not necessary all the time. So I think that it's fine to have a more lighthearted movie or whatever and have some humor, but, you know, it's not always necessary. It can get, if it's too much, it feels forced, and it's just, it gets to the point where it's like, okay, we get it, like, you know, we understand it's funny, okay, whatever. But there's certain parts that don't need to be funny. So, and also the fight, like for instance in Civil War, they really try to hype it up in the trailers and everything like that. But when they were fighting, I mentioned this in another video, when they were fighting like at the airport, I didn't feel anything, like it didn't feel like a true fight. And I didn't feel like they were trying to accomplish anything by fighting. It was just a fight scene to have a fight scene because they named the movie Civil War. There's no, it should be like, kind of, you should feel like sort of emotional and invested in that, you know? And I don't feel like that at all. Like they're joking with each other, it didn't resonate with me personally. Because I kind of feel like they were fighting for no reason. And if you're gonna have a fight like that, like I said, it should reach you like on a deeper level. And it didn't do that for me. And so they have good action sequences in their movies, the lighter hearted movies and everything like that. It's just, I feel like they're not as realistic because like for instance, DC movies are darker, but at the same time they feel more realistic to me. In the current DCEU that we have right now, they have darker characters, like they have darker origin stories, so they're not going to be lighthearted. Like that's what I think people don't understand all the time. You know, why are they so dark? Why are they so serious? Because that's their characters. Like, it wouldn't make sense for them to be the same, you know, or very lighthearted. Yes, Justice League is going to have a lighter tone than, like, you know, Batman v Superman and whatever. But it just, like, when you think, okay, for instance, take Batman. He's not a light-hearted character. He doesn't have a light-hearted origin. He has a dark origin. He saw his parents get murdered as a child. His character's not going to be lighthearted and funny. You know what I mean? Like, this doesn't fit him. And even Superman, I think people are kind of expect him to just be, you know, his life is perfect. He's a perfect being. There's no challenges. There's no, nothing ever goes wrong. He always saves the day. Everything's fine. Everyone loves him. And if you think in the DCEU, Zack Snyder gave us a more realistic interpretation of how the world would be if there was a Superman. And I've said this in another video too. You know, he has to deal, just Superman in general, not just Henry Cavill Superman, but Superman in general has to deal with the fact, even in the animated series and movies and all that stuff, he makes mistakes. He's not perfect because he grew up on Earth. He was raised by humans. He has a human side to him. He has human emotions. He's not just a robotic creature that has no emotion and doesn't make mistakes. So he also has to deal with the fact that he cannot save everyone. And, you know, if you put yourself in that position, if you had those kind of superpowers and you were this super being and you're like the most powerful being on Earth in this case, you would feel a responsibility to save everyone. And he can't do that. So that's hard for him to live with. And so he's not always just going to be happy and cheery and, you know, it's not going to be that way. So I think that even though the DCU movies tend to have a darker tone, more serious tone, they're more realistic. And that's what I like about them. And that they're emotional. the Marvel movie, like the lighthearted Marvel movies and, you know, comic book movies, they are not emotional for me. And so they don't have a deeper meaning. They kind of just have like, you know, a very, what's the word I'm looking for? They have generic plots that are very easy to understand. They're easy to follow. They're not, you know, they're not complex. You don't really have to think about it. You just watch it, enjoy it, and, you know, that's it. They don't stick with me on an emotional level, is what I'm trying to say. The darker movies that are like the DCEU movies, they stick with me because they're emotional. And I can, like, feel it when I'm watching it. If that makes sense. That's just my personal opinion. Everyone has a different opinion about it, you know. But like I said, there's no reason you can't like both. If you want to watch, if you feel like watching a lighthearted movie, you want to laugh, then watch, you know, enjoy it. I enjoy the Marvel movies when I see them. But, for instance, the DCU movies, I like to watch them a lot, like over and over again. The Marvel movies, I don't really tend to do that. Like, I don't leave, when I go see one in theaters, I don't leave the theater, like, feeling like, oh my gosh, I can't wait to watch it again. It was so epic. It was so, like, I felt that, you know, that's just me. When I watch Man of Steel, when I watch Batman v Superman, even Wonder Woman is not, it's not dark, but it's more emotional. Those movies, I, like, have cried, I've gotten teary-eyed, you know, so I feel like, oh, I can't wait to watch it again. I feel the same way every time I watch it. I feel emotional every time I watch it. I connect with it every time I watch it, even though I've seen it several times. The more lighthearted, funny, humorous, comedic, you know, joke every other line, those movies, I don't feel that way. And it's not that I feel sad when I watch the darker tone movies. It's just you can connect with them more, in my opinion. That's how I feel when I watch them. And so I don't think that anyone can say, oh, these ones are better or these ones are better. Just that, you know, then that's it, set in stone. It's not like that. There's things that are more, you know, things that are better on the lighthearted ones and things that are better in the darker ones. So I think the reason a lot of people might not like the DCEU movies and the darker tone is just because Marvel has been making these movies for a really long time, and the DCEU took a long time to, you know, we didn't get Man of Steel till like 2014. And the first Iron Man movie is pretty old. I can't remember what year it came out, but it's like 10 years ago. Yeah, it was like 2007, something like that. So the only thing that we really had to compare these new comic book movies to is Marvel. And people tend, you know, if you have something to compare it to, then you're going to want it to kind of be the same. And so I feel like that's why some people, or a lot of people, are just... And so since that's what people have to compare it to, and that's what they've been used to for, you know, several years, they've become accustomed to that tone and that format, the way those movies are. And so when these other new movies come out that are darker and they're not super funny and they're just, you know, not action every second, and, you know, there's more complex plots and there's more emotion and stuff like that, and there's more risks taken, such as Superman killing Zod in Man of Steel. When that, you know, is happening in a superhero movie, after we've had all these, you know, lighthearted, funny, you know, no one dies type of things. Well, people do die, but I mean, like, main characters. Then people are like, oh no, I don't like it. And that's not really a fair way to judge the movie. I don't like to... They don't have to be the same. They shouldn't be the same. They should not be the same. So that's what I think. I personally prefer, if I had to choose, I would pick the DCEU over the MCU. Just because of the reasons I listed. But that doesn't mean I don't like Marvel. I do like Marvel. I do, like I said, sometimes the humor will ruin certain things for me just because I feel like it's just getting to be too much. And, you know, whatever. But I enjoy their movies. I do. They just don't stick with me the same way. And so, like I said, I think it depends on who you ask. Everyone's going to have a different opinion about it. Like I said, there's no reason to hate one and love the other. You can like both. You can just prefer certain things. You know, I prefer this about this universe. I prefer these things about this universe. It's okay, you know, to like different things about both of them. So, thanks again for the question. I hope I answered your question in a, you know, satisfying way. And so there's a couple links in the description. Link for my Twitter account, so you can follow me on there. I'm always having these kinds of like comic book conversations and stuff like that. So you can follow me on there. There's a link in the description. There's also a link for my Patreon account, so you can pledge to my Patreon account if you enjoy my content. And like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. Thanks for watching, guys. We'll see you next time.